Right, and back to that story about the final report being released by the Human Rights Commission on the July unrest of 2021 and its findings. We're joined now by CRL chairperson Professor David Mosoma to speak just a little bit more about this. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening, Sepiso. We have an issue of a video here, so you will talk to me without seeing me and me seeing you. But let's proceed. Thank you so much for inviting us and your viewers or your listeners, one way or the other. Thank you.
Indeed, let's proceed. So I just want to touch on some of what's come out and being discussed during the day following the release of the report. So the findings were that in no way were these about former President Jacob Zuma being incarcerated. But the report does say that these are well orchestrated, the riots themselves were very well orchestrated, and they were broadly political, motivated by political discord within the ANC. I find this very interesting given the current context we're in now. We just had an ANC NEC meeting with a decision outcome to suspend the former President Jacob Zuma. And of course, there have been those who've been speculating, even going as far as saying that the result of the expulsion of the former president would result in a lot of unease which could unravel. Just reflecting on this report, the findings and some of the factors that come out, is this something that we should be wary of as South Africans?
I think we should, especially because so far we don't have people that have been prosecuted, charged and imprisoned for this, and the law enforcement agencies are still investigating. One person has been sentenced to 12 years, but he has appealed the sentence. So there is a lot of speculation which is inconclusive as precisely behind the scene who was responsible. Remember, from the perspective of CRL, we don't have the capacity to really investigate to the extent of linking the person with an event that occurred. Only the law enforcement agencies are capable, and in terms of their also the mandate they have to do. Ours really fall short of that. So hearing people talk about the possibility of these occurrences as being criminal, as being orchestrated, with people who behind the scene could have done it, it's merely a story. But the law enforcement agencies must be able to find evidence to link individuals to that particular occurrence, which we are not capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Our mandate as a commission, CRL Commission, is really about building, constructing, educating society on issues of friendship, on issues of humanity, issues of tolerance, issues of unity among cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, issues of free association, all this without discrimination. And when there's a turbulence of discord in communities, it concerns us, because now the community is not able to live together on the basis of the principle enshrined both in the Constitution and the Act. Hence our investigation. In terms of human relationship, what could have happened? And the people who appeared before us, they give some indications, but they could not go deeper into saying this one is responsible for this. From their understanding, in terms of the breakdown of relationship, there is, for example, issues of racism.
Okay.
That racism is prevalent. Yes.
So there was no definitive proof to link individuals to what was stated then as the causation of those riots. But I want to look at some of what was brought up. So disinformation was raised, the use of social media and the end result. So many of the posts during the period of the unrest encouraged and endorsed violence and looting, incitement, and most of the posts inciting violence which likely occurred on closed platforms. But I just want to understand people being influenced by political players, if this is the case. The fragile society that you speak about, what can be done going forward to ensure that we never find ourselves in a situation such as this? I mean, just looking at the recommendations, can you tell us if we're going to take a multi-stakeholder approach, what can be done?
You're very right. In a fourth industrial revolution, where there is a lot of fake news and things like that, it's very difficult unless you have seen it, unless you can prove it, to say definitely this is what has happened and this is who caused it. Which is why, from the perspective of both the Human Rights and CRL Rights Commission, we felt that the most qualified people to do that are the law enforcement agencies. They have the instruments to be able to do that. But going forward, we are trying to look at what can be done as a community, especially from the CRL rights. One is the issue of education. Remember that racism, it's not, one is not born a racist. It's part of the it's a socialization process to become a racist. But also, racism has some benefits. People have been able, as a group, to develop to the extent that another group has not developed, because the other group was so marginalized and to be used as an instrument in the service of this racist notion, racist ideology. So there's a benefit. Until you are able to take the benefit of racism and make sure that the benefit is actually no longer that which is useful to them, if you can't do that, racism will continue, because it determines where people stay, what they eat, how much they can earn, where they can work, and all of that. Even the access to wealth, that itself, if you look at...
I want to talk about the access to wealth, Mr. Mosoma. Mr. Mosoma, we are running out of time and I need to deal with this. The social spatial factors that were mentioned in your report. I think it was Busa that says if Alexandra continues to exist like it does now in the next 10 years, there won't be a Sandton. So sometimes, or not sometimes, it is obviously beyond racism. It is about the growing inequality. That is an issue of a failure to have structural changes. How do we deal with that outside of politics as a nation? Were there any findings that hinted at that?
No, we have not had a finding like that. But what is important is that maybe it is important to self-reflect as a people. One is that when a system is created which gives the opposite of what we seek to achieve, what is important is to develop a system that undermines the system that does not want to offer the benefits to all. In other words, we must be system-oriented people. You know, racism has given birth to apartheid. Apartheid has given birth to apartheid spatial planning. And you can't change that. And where Alexander is, you can't change it. Where Mabopani is, you can't change it, because it's part of the system. But how do you bring about communities? Now, we look at the system of integration. And that system of integration has to start with the allocation of resources, equitable distribution of resources for the benefit of all. So that must be a deliberate process which is built into a system of reconstructing a new society. It cannot be a situation where we simply talk about what can become. It is, we must work towards what can become through our efforts jointly and collectively.
Professor David Mosoma, I do thank you for your time and apologize that we didn't have much to talk about these very in-depth discussions. I know that they do deserve time. He is the Commission for Promotion and Protection of Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities head.